This is GTA 6, one of the biggest games ever made. But GTA began somewhere completely unexpected. Let's rewind. What do an old ZX Spectrum, these tiny little people, the young men in this photograph, and GTA 6 have in common? The answer did not begin in New York, not in a Rockstar office, and not even with Grand Theft Auto. It began in the Scottish city of Dundee with a young factory worker who volunteered to leave his job and put his severance pay into a computer. He told his parents it was an investment in the future. By his own account, he really just wanted to play the newest games. The first GTA was still more than a decade away. Rockstar did not even exist. But that computer began a relay that would last nearly 40 years. The people would change, while one small spark passed from hand to hand and kept growing. This is not just the story of GTA. It is the story of one of the greatest chains of accidents in video game history. First machine. In the early 1980s, David Jones built a ZX81 from a kit. Not as an experiment, the kit made the computer 20 pounds cheaper. Before long, he landed his dream job, an engineering apprenticeship at the Timex factory in Dundee. Timex was famous for watches, but this factory also built home computers for Sinclair, the ZX81 and ZX Spectrum that taught an entire British generation to code. When the factory ran into trouble, employees were offered compensation to leave voluntarily. Jones took the offer. The money helped him enroll in college and buy an Amiga 1000, an incredibly expensive computer that was still rare at the time. At his parents' house, he began coding Menace, a space shooter inspired by arcade games. Jones recorded some of its sounds directly from a machine at his local arcade. He wrote code at night in his bedroom while continuing his studies. There was no studio yet, just a student, a new computer, and the belief that he could build a real game on it. Before the game was even released, Jones brought in friends from an amateur computer club, Russell Kay, Steve Hammond, and Mike Daly. Together they chose a name, DMA Design. Menace was released under that name in 1988 and made enough money to turn a hobby into a job. Their first office was only one step above coding in a bedroom, a tiny space on Perth Road, a fish shop across the street, Amiga computers, and a very young team. Jones himself was only 23. And it was here, during an ordinary lunch break, that the next almost impossible coincidence occurred. Chapter 2. 8 Pixels. The team was working on Walker, a game about a giant war machine. An artist had drawn tiny 16 by 16 pixel people for it. They were nothing more than targets. Mike Daly looked at them and decided to prove that a human being could fit inside an 8 by 8 square. During a single lunch break, he drew the tiny creatures and made them walk across the screen. Then someone dropped a heavy weight on them. Someone else added a giant chomping mouth. Another made their movements funnier and more alive. The people gathered around the computer started laughing. Russell Kay looked at the screen and said the words that changed everything. "There's a game in that." He was also the one who called the creatures Lemmings. Their green hair was not symbolic. On the computer's limited color palette, green simply looked better than blue. The first demo was shown to a publisher and then shelved. The game's formula did not exist yet. They returned to the little creatures only because an entirely different Jones project had fallen apart. One failure had accidentally saved a future hit. Now the player would not destroy the tiny creatures, but save them from their own stubborn march. teach one to dig, another to build. Make a third stop and turn the others around. Lemmings was released for the Amiga on February 14, 1991. More than 55,000 copies shipped on the first day, more than the total lifetime sales of any previous DMA game. Across its many versions, Lemmings would eventually sell around 15 million copies. A handful of friends in 2 small rooms had created one of the most recognizable games of the 1990s. But their next great idea would turn the Lemmings formula upside down. This time, they would not save characters from the world. An entire city would try to save itself from the player. Almost canceled. In 1995, DMA began a project called Race and Chase. Players could choose a side, police officer or criminal. But the team quickly realized that obeying the law was far less fun than breaking it. The project promised a living city, stolen cars, and police chases. In reality, it crashed constantly, and the cars handled terribly. The 1-year deadline passed. The game still did not work properly. Development eventually stretched to 2.5 years. BMG was ready to cancel the project. Producer Gary Penn remembered that it had gone nowhere for years and remained a complete mess. Then, the police suddenly went insane. Because of a pathfinding bug, police cars tried to drive straight through the player's vehicle, ramming it and forcing it off the road. For the first time, a boring chase felt like an action movie. The team did not simply leave the bug in place. They adjusted it and turned it into part of the game. The bug did not create GTA, as the story is often told, but it helped save a game that was about to be canceled. Race and Chase received a new name, Grand Theft Auto. In 1997, players saw Liberty City, Vice City, and San Andreas from above, tiny cars, ringing payphones, and the freedom to abandon a mission and drive anywhere. The first GTA sold more than 1 million copies. But publisher BMG decided to leave the video game business, and Take-Two bought the rights to GTA. The Hauser brothers moved to New York and founded Rockstar Games, the gaming equivalent of a record label with its own taste, voice, and attitude. The system was simple. Take-Two owned Rockstar. Rockstar defined the style, and the former DMA Design, soon to become Rockstar North, built the worlds of GTA. The next gamble was the most dangerous, dropping the camera from the sky to the street. Beyond Sky. In 2001, the camera moved behind the player, and the flat map became a 3-dimensional Liberty City. You could steal almost any car, ignore the mission, and simply test what the city would let you do. Vice City and San Andreas proved that Rockstar had found its formula, and each new city became bigger and more expensive. Then, on September 17, 2013, GTA 5 arrived. It made more than $800 million in one day. $1 billion in 3. Faster than any entertainment product before it. It seemed impossible to climb any higher. But at the very top, Rockstar stepped into a trap of its own making. 2 weeks later, GTA Online launched. Free updates and sales of virtual currency turned a single game into a business that could live for years. A former developer later explained why the planned story expansions disappeared. They could not compete with the money coming from the online mode. For the first time, GTA could generate enormous revenue without a new GTA. And the question inside Rockstar changed. It was no longer, what game should we make next? It became, how do we create a game capable of replacing the most profitable GTA in history? In 2020, while that answer was still being built, One of Rockstar's founders and the lead writer behind the series left the company. Dan Houser later explained his decision with a line that sounds like the other side of Russell K's words. "I don't know if I had another one of those games in me." One more. Now the people who stayed must answer that question. GTA 6 became the first numbered game in the series written without Dan Houser, the man who had shaped its voice for more than 20 years. The team inherited an almost impossible task, not merely to make a sequel, but to give the world a reason to leave GTA 5, a game that had kept making money for more than a decade. The first trailer revealed two new protagonists, Jason and Lucia, and a return to Vice City. More than 90 million people watched it in 24 hours. The audience had already given its part of the answer. They were still waiting. Then the release was delayed, and delayed again to November 19th, 2026. But the anticipation did not disappear. It became so large that more than gaming calendars began to rearrange themselves around the release date. The American company Berger Motorsports announced an operational pause for November 19th. Employees had already warned that they would be unavailable or in Vice City. Even the head of Take-Two, Rockstar's parent company, joked that plenty of people would call in sick that day. GTA 6 is not out yet, but its release date alone is already changing work schedules. That is the true scale of this journey. Today in Dundee, 3 bronze lemmings climb a stone wall near DMA Design's first office. Once, a creature like that had to fit inside an 8x8 pixel square. Now, the game that grew from that tiny team is awaited as if the real world might stop for a day. That is how the relay reached a team now facing the task that Dan Houser himself may no longer have had the strength to attempt. On November 19th, we will find out whether this team can light the fire for one more game like it. If you enjoy stories about the people and decisions behind the world's greatest companies, subscribing really does help us tell more of them.